Resident Evil is one of my favorite video game. It is my favorite video game franchise of all time. It's one of my favorite franchises of all time. And if you've been watching this channel for a little bit, you know how much I love Resident Evil, which, by the way, rest in peace to the Netflix Resident Evil show. I did a couple reviews on it. I liked it, but it's canceled. It's been a little bit since I've done a Resident Evil video, and I figured I should probably do another one. And I figured I also want to experiment, do a type of video that I've yet to do on this channel, and that is tier ranking. I am going to tier rank all the Resident Evil cover arts, the covers of the video games, the pictures on the cases of the Resident Evil video games. Before I get too deep into the video though, please consider subscribing. I love Resident Evil. If you want to support a fellow Resident Evil fanatic like yourself, consider subscribing. I do Resident Evil videos a lot. I also do trailer reactions, TV show discussions, movie discussions. If you like House of the Dragon, I'm doing a lot of those videos lately because it's out now and I'm hyped. Also, again, before I get too deep into this video, this ranking is purely my opinion. This isn't me trying to be non-biased, thinking about what, you know, is the best cover and from a non-biased perspective. This is me being incredibly 100% biased, me just choosing what I think is the best from S tier all the way to F tier, but there is no E tier. It goes D to F. One thing to keep in mind with Resident Evil covers, or just any video game cover, or just covers for a lot of things, is that a lot of it comes from nostalgia, how much you like it and how much you dislike it or how much you don't care for it. So keep in mind that most of my opinion is probably going to be based on nostalgia, and I'm sure you're probably the same. So if I rank one of your favorites low, it might be because I hate it. It also might just be because it holds no sentimental value to me. Again, this is just my biased opinion. Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. I am currently moving the mouse around. Anyway, S tier all the way to F tier. And I'm not going in order either because I thought that would be kind of boring. But I don't know what to start with. You know, let's just get this out of the way. I am going to start with Resident Evil 6. I actually like Resident Evil 6 more than the average person. I thought it was a fun game, especially knowing that Capcom has got back on track with the Resident Evil franchise. I'm able to go back and play it. But I'm not going to talk too much about the games themselves. This is about the artwork. And with that being said, this artwork is absolute garbage. It is the laziest artwork I've seen on almost any video game ever. It just looks lazy. It just looks lame. And of course, once you point out the giraffe thing, I know a lot of people have pointed out the giraffe thing. I can't unsee it. This is absolutely F tier. Worst cover. Maybe not the worst cover, but I think it absolutely deserves to be F tier. Seems like there's absolutely no creativity towards it. Next, however, I added the Resident Evil 6 remastered cover. This is the cover that's on the PS4 version of the remastered version of Resident Evil 6 or the Xbox One version. I like this cover more. It kind of looks like Final Fantasy. It doesn't really scream Resident Evil. It just has a stacked cast of characters. You got Leon front and center. It's got Chris on it. It's got other people on it. And I like it. I love all those characters. I love the ensemble cast of that game. Though, I'm not going to say it's the best because it's not, but I'm not going to say I dislike it. So for right now, I'm going to put it in a solid B tier. And with that being said, this isn't my be-all, end-all answer. At the end of this, when I have everything tier ranked, I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure that I'm not mistaken on any of them. So don't click away yet because for all you know, by the end of this video, that could be an F. And Resident Evil 6 could be an S. Next, let's do Resident Evil Survivor. This is one of those overlooked Resident Evil games. Not a lot of people played it. It had like the circle reticle that came back in Resident Evil Dead Aim. Don't love this cover. I don't hate this cover, especially for the time period. Resident Evil 1, it's got a creepy image on it, but it's not really doing anything for me. It doesn't make me excited to see it, though I'm not overly mad at it. So I'm gonna give it a C. I'm gonna give Resident Evil Survivor a C tier. Next, let's do Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles. That was the Wii game. It essentially remade Resident Evil 1, and it also had its own sort of story going for it. The more that I look at this cover, the less that I like it. In fact, it looks really awkward. Like, Wesker is a bit too faded in the background, in my opinion, and then the Umbrella logo in the front is just awkward. It just looks like an awkward image to me, so I'm going to put it in D tier. Next, let's do Resident Evil Gaiden. This was a game for the Game Boy. Aesthetically, I kind of like it. It kind of looks like manga art, which I'm not a huge fan of manga, but it's got Leon on it. This game, I don't think anyone really considers this game to be canon. It might be canon. I should know that. I know I feel like a fraud that I don't. It's C for me. It falls right along the lines of Resident Evil Survivor. I'm not offended by it, but I don't think it's good. I get nothing from it. Resident Evil 5. A lot of people don't like this game. This game has a lot of nostalgia for me. I waited so long for this game. I was so hyped. It felt like decades before this game came out. I know in reality it's probably like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. But back in the day, it felt like I was waiting for this game for decades. And believe it or not, I really like the colors to it. I like the orange. I like Africa outlined. I like the characters. I like the characters' poses. I like the logo for the 5. Does it belong in B or A? For right now, I'm going to put it in B tier. That could change by the end, but for right now, it's B tier. Let's go into now. You know what? Fuck it. Let's do the original Resident Evil game. This is the original Resident Evil 1 for the PS1. I never liked this artwork. I know that's probably a hot take. I know a lot of people are probably going to want to behead me and skin me alive. It just is awkward. I know that's Chris. It doesn't really look like Chris, though. The vibes don't really match the game that well. Would it be blasphemy to put it in D tier? It's my opinion. But I don't hate it either. I get happy when I see it. I'll say that. Artwork alone, I don't like it. But what it makes me feel, I like. So I'm going to put it in C tier. I feel like I've been talking negatively about a lot of these. So let's talk about one that I actually really, really like. And that is Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. I loved this game. It's one of my favorite Resident Evil games of all time. I think a lot of people have very fond feelings towards this because a lot of people, myself included, consider this to be the game that saved the franchise. And but it's about the artwork. I love it. I feel like it matches the tone of the game perfectly. I feel like it matches the tone of Resident Evil perfectly, looking in on this really creepy structure. I do have one complaint about this cover art though, and it looks a bit washed out. It looks like they could have adjusted, the contrast or the saturation or whatever the fuck to make it not have that washed out vibe. It feels like it should just be a bit darker than it is in some places, but I really, really like it, and I'm gonna give it, for now, an A tier. You know what? Fuck it. We did Biohazard. Let's do the second game in the Ethan Winters series, and that is, or the Ethan Winters narrative, and that is Resident Evil 8 Village, the newest mainline Resident Evil game. And I like this game a lot. I don't know if I like it as much as Biohazard, but I still think it's one of the best Resident Evil games. I had so much fun playing it, and I really, really like this cover art. I like the tone. I love the color palette. I was wondering what the narrative was going to be looking at this. Leading up to its release date, seeing half of Chris's face, half of a werewolf. I had no idea what the plot was going to be, what the reason was. This cover, I feel like, did everything that it needed to do. I loved it. My mind ran wild while I was waiting for the release, and I'm going to put it in A tier as well. Though those two might go up by the end, just saying. But for right now, A tier. Okay, I just did two that I really like. Now I'm going to do one I hate, and that's Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. Not only a shitty game, the shittiest Resident Evil game to exist, one of the shittiest video games to exist. I'm offended that it even exists. Like, it shits on the Resident Evil legacy. It spits all over the franchise. I hate that it exists. I just hate it, and I hate the cover art. It looks like there was no innovation involved at all. Like, yeah, it's 3 badass looking people, but like, just fuck the game and fuck the cover art. F tier. Though I will say that the cover art is by far the best thing about the game. I already did Resident Evil 5, but I also included the remastered version of Resident Evil 5, or it's kind of like a version of the Gold Edition, but like not gold all over it. It's just the PS4 remastered version of Resident Evil 5 right here with Chris and Jill instead of Chris and Sheva. I like this artwork. I don't think I like it more than the original Resident Evil 5, though I don't like it significantly worse either. Obviously, seeing Chris and Jill together is something special. They're the 2 OGs. They're the 2 original main characters. And we don't have... I think this is the only video game where they're together on the cover, front and center, off the top of my mind. And I respect it for that. I don't think it fits Resident Evil 5 as perfectly as the original cover does, obviously, because Jill is only a side character, but she's the main character in the DLC. But I still love it. I still love what it brings to the table. So I'm going to put it in B tier alongside the other Resident Evil 5 one. Let's get into the Outbreak games, shall we? Resident Evil Outbreak is beloved among the community. I, like many of you, want a remake. I would love a remaster. I would love for that series to continue somewhere, somehow, some way. But I don't like this cover. I never liked it ever since I was a kid. It's just a handgun being shot. And it's not even like a cool picture of a handgun. Like, it's not even like the full thing. It just looks weird, awkward. Never liked it. Though the color pattern is kind of cool. The colors they use. They use the logo from the movies. The Resident Evil, the Paul W.S. Anderson movies. like the font for Resident Evil, which, I mean, I get marketing reasons why they did that, though it's not my favorite version of the font or for the logo, but I'll put it in D tier. I don't hate it. It doesn't deserve to be an F tier, but I don't love it. I think they could have done it a lot better. Man, I am stuttering like a madman today, but let's do Resident Evil Outbreak Files 2. I actually really enjoy this cover. I always liked looking at this case as a kid. Like, I would just stare at my video games like a weirdo, and this was one of my favorites of all the Resident Evil games that I had at the time. I think it's really creepy, a guy pulling up his buddy while zombies are pulling him in. I assume they're coming out of a sewer. It always just triggered my imagination to work in these most absurd ways that I loved. I really like this artwork. It's just so horrifying. I think it's one of the scariest images on any of the covers for any of the Resident Evil games, and for that reason alone, oh man, it could be S, but for right now I'm going to put it in A tier. I really love that artwork. Okay, let's do Resident Evil Resistance now. This game wasn't a standalone release. This was the multiplayer aspect that was included with the Resident Evil 3 remake. I'm not going to really talk much about it. There's nothing really that bad about it, but it doesn't really do anything for me, so with that being said, C tier. Another multiplayer-centric game, and that's Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. I had a lot of fun playing this game back in the day. I'm glad the Resident Evil series didn't continue down this route, though. I liked this game for what it was, and every now and then, believe it or not, I like to go back and I like to play it. And actually, believe it or not, you can't really tell, but the logo they used for Resident Evil, like the font in Resident Evil, is one of my favorites that the franchise has ever used. Though I do think that the collector's edition version of this cover is a lot better. It's like black and white. I didn't include it in this, though I'm realizing now that I should have. That would have ranked higher. But this one, as it stands, C tier. Resident Evil Mercenaries that came out for the Nintendo 3DS. I never actually played this one, though I did look at the artwork a lot, because whenever I would go to the store, I would hold it up and I would look at it and I would wish that I could play it, but I didn't have a 3DS. Don't love it, though. It doesn't even deserve to be C tier. It just looks kind of lame to me. Like, I like the Executioner. I like Chris. I think that it's a cool conflict. But I feel like it could have been done better, so, well, I do think it's technically better than Umbrella Chronicles and Outbreak, but do I think it's as good as these ones? Oh, fuck. D. Let's do the prequel now, Resident Evil 0. This is a very average Resident Evil game to me. I actually was introduced to this game through the novelization, which I really loved, and I read it when I was a kid, and I liked it a lot. I don't hate this game. I know a lot of people don't think too fondly of this game. I like it, though it's not amazing. The cover artwork to me is just average. It's just two characters standing there. And the more that I look at this, the more that I see they just use the same basic concepts over and over. Two characters standing next to each other. Sometimes one of them are aiming a gun, an enemy usually in the background. It's coming across kind of lazily, which is one of the reasons why I think I really love Biohazard and Resident Evil 8 Village, because it's changing things up. You know what I mean? It's doing something different than what Resident Evil constantly did for years. You know, I might put it in D tier, though I'll feel bad because I do like the game, but I got to get that out of my mind. I'm not ranking the games. I'm ranking the cover art. I think it has the potential to be in C tier, but I am going to put it in D tier because I don't think it has that color palette that's saving the games that are in C tier. You know what I mean? Like, at least there's something about them that I'm finding enjoyable. But with Resident Evil 0, it's just a bland image with bland colors, I mean. You know what? We did Resident Evil 1. Now let's do Resident Evil Director's Cut. This is the version of the game that I grew up with. My parents had Resident Evil Director's Cut for the PS1. They didn't have the original one. So the Director's Cut is the one that I played. That is the case that I stared at. And I think it does everything perfectly. It's so creepy. It, like, perfectly captures that moment when you first encounter that first zombie and he's biting down and he's eating Kenneth's neck and he turns around and he looks at you and it's horrifying, and that is when the horror began. That is when Resident Evil began. It's nostalgic for everyone, and it's just a perfect image for the beginning of a perfect franchise that I love. Not a perfect franchise, but my favorite franchise that I love, and it captures the tone of the game, it captures the tone of the universe, and it's going to be my first one in S tier. Resident Evil Code Veronica X. This was one of my favorite games as a kid. I still think it's one of the best games in the entire Resident Evil franchise, though I never liked the artwork. I never really liked the colors. I always thought the character models looked a bit too anime style for me. I know a lot of people are fans of that. I'm not personally, so I'm going to put it in D tier. Resident Evil Dead Aim, an incredibly short game that costs quite a bit of money aftermarket these days. Though I have it, I liked it, I enjoyed it. It's just doing what Resident Evil covers do. You know what I mean? The two characters holding the gun, enemies in the background. It doesn't deserve to be C tier because, again, it reminds me of Resident Evil 0, where it doesn't even have like an aesthetically pleasing color palette. It just looks bland, so I'm gonna do D. It's not overly offensive. It doesn't really technically do anything wrong, but it's not trying to be better than it is. Resident Evil The Dark Side Chronicles, the second game that came out for the Wii. It's essentially retelling Resident Evil 2. I always liked this artwork as a kid. I really, really liked it, though I do think this concept was done better in a very recent game that came out afterwards. But this cover is still good, you know what I mean? So I'm going to put it in B tier. I like Leon, I like Claire, I like that Krauser's in there, I like the color palette. But I feel like that idea, that concept of a cover was done better by, right here, Resident Evil 2 Remake. I actually have a poster for this game on my wall, right over there. 24 by 36 poster. That's how much I love this artwork. It's just kind of like what Resident Evil Director's Cut is. This is that, but for Resident Evil 2. Leon and Claire are iconic characters. I think they're two of the best characters in the entire franchise. I know a lot of people think that. I think narratively, I think Resident Evil 2 is like one of the best games. I love the police station setting. I love the Hive setting. I love being in Raccoon City. I think that this poster is doing everything right. Oh, but does it deserve S tier? I just said it's doing everything right, so I'm going to look like a liar if I don't put it in S tier, but there's still just something not quite there. And I think that's the nostalgia part for me. And again, I told you nostalgia was going to play a huge part in this, but it's still going to be an A tier. I still really, really, really love that artwork. Give it a decade. It'll be S tier then. Since we just did Resident Evil 2 Remake, let's do Resident Evil 3 Remake. It very much did do exactly what Resident Evil did, just with Jill and Carlos, and you got Nemesis in the background there. The color palette's almost identical. The tone, the atmosphere, the vibe that it's giving is almost identical, which I'm not complaining about because I love the games, I love the characters. But with that being said, just seeing Leon and Claire together is a bit more iconic, a bit more, makes my heart fuzzy more than it does Jill and Carlos, and for that reason alone, I am going to put it down to B tier. B tier is still good, but it's not doing as much for me as the Resident Evil 2 cover did. We just did those two remakes, so let's go back in time and do the original remake for the original Resident Evil game that came out for GameCube. When I was a kid, I didn't like this image, believe it or not. I thought it was really weird. I thought it was a really awkward picture to choose as the cover of a game. I still kind of feel that way, but nostalgia is kicking in hard and heavy for this one. I really, really, really like this image. It grows on me more and more as the years go. And whenever I see this case, I think about how amazing that game is. And much like the original, or much like Resident Evil Director's Cut, I feel like it matches the tone and the vibe of that game perfectly, more so than the remastered version did, which I didn't include that remastered cover because I forgot to. But you know, fuck. I'm going to put it in A tier for now. It has a very strong chance of going up to S tier though, so don't complain at me yet. Resident Evil Revelations. I really like this cover. I think it's really creepy. I like how they match the eye with the, the window from under the ocean. I think it's really creepy. I'm a sucker for blue. I'm realizing as I'm looking at this, the more blue on the cover, the more that I tend to like it, unless you're Resident Evil 6. But this one's not really doing anything. You know what? B tier. It's not as good to be an A or S, but it's not making me mad. I really like it. I think it matches the tone of the game. But with that being said, Resident Evil Revelations 2, I feel like is D, because it just seems kind of lazy. It looks like they're just trying to copy what made the Revelations 1 game cover art so good, though this one looks less creative, and it matches the tone of the game a little bit less, in my opinion. Plus, it just kind of reminds me of like Jeepers Creepers or Texas Chainsaw Massacre for some reason, because the colors, where at least Revelations felt Resident Evil-y because it looks like a bio weapon eye, where the other one just looks like a human's eye. Okay, we are down to our final three covers, and they're three really good covers. I did not plan this, it just kind of happened. But Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is going directly, in my opinion, into... It's going directly into A tier, because again, I feel like it did everything that it needed to do. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis introduced Nemesis, who at that time was the biggest, most badass, biggest threat in the game, and it's still terrifying, knowing that he can pop in wherever, whenever, and chase you around like a crazy madman, and I love it. And I feel like this cover portrays that perfectly, because yes, Resident Evil 1 has a zombie on it, yes, Resident Evil 2 has a zombie on it, but Resident Evil 3, when you compare those three together, it's like zombie, giant, badass BOW. Like, what the fuck am I gonna verse in this one? Resident Evil 2, going directly into S tier. Is that cliche of me? I have Resident Evil and then Resident Evil 2 in S tier, but that image is so horrifying to me. That image always scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. Even looking at it next to Director's Cut, I'm getting the heebie-jeebies. But it scares me more because those fingers, the fingers holding up the 2 are creepy. It always creeped me out because I remember always putting in this game as a kid and always, getting terrified and then ejecting it from the PS1. But I always remember thinking, how does this zombie know that I'm playing Resident Evil 2? How does this zombie know it's in Resident Evil 2? How is this zombie holding up a 2? It's like it's inviting me in to kill me. It's like it's luring me into the game because it wants me to play and have fun, and then it's going to murder me with its disgusting teeth and fingers, and it's horrifying, and I still feel that way even when I look at it. Resident Evil 4, a lot of people consider this to be the best game in the franchise. I may agree with that. I have so much nostalgia for this game, and it has tons of cover artwork. Okay, oops, I accidentally put an F tier. I didn't mean to do that. This is not the original GameCube art. I know a lot of people might be mad at me for that, but I've never owned the GameCube version. I never played it on GameCube. That artwork has no sentimental value to me at all. That's why it's not here, and I would feel bad ranking it without having the attachment to it. Nor did I include the remastered artwork, because the remastered artwork tonally is very similar to this one. But this is the one I grew up with. This is the PS2 cover art. This is the artwork that I looked at many a time. This is the artwork that I tried to recreate and draw poorly, very badly, for a very long time. Does it deserve S tier? You know what? For right now, I'm going to put it in A tier. Okay, that is my initial ranking of all the Resident Evil cover arts. But now I'm going to look through it, and I'm going to make sure that I am not mistaken in any of them. So first, F tier. Resident Evil 6 absolutely does belong there. Resident Evil Umbrella Corps belongs there, in my opinion. D tier. The more that I look at Umbrella Chronicles, the more that I think it doesn't belong in D tier, because it's not as good as the rest of them in D tier, so I'm gonna put Umbrella Chronicles down in F tier. Outbreak belongs where it is, that belongs where it is, that I think I'm pretty good there. Resident Evil Revelations 2, it's a fine image, the colors pop, it's really good. I'm just kind of mad at it for just being a recreation of Revelations, just minus any of the mystery. Resident Evil Survivor, Gaiden, sure. Gaiden, though, might be lower because I don't like the background. I think the background is lazy. But for a Game Boy game at the time, I think it's fine. The original game, yeah, Resistance. I don't know. Resistance might. Yeah, I'm putting Resistance in D tier. B tier looks good in my opinion. B tier looks good in my opinion. I love the Resident Evil 6 remastered artwork. I love the Resident Evil 5 artwork. I really like Dark Side Chronicles artwork. I like all that artwork. It's just that the problem is, the reason that pretty much everything in B tier isn't in A or S is because there's not much innovation. You know what I mean? It's just two people standing there, cool colors, but like, it's not doing anything for me. You know what I mean? Like, I like it because I like the characters, but that's essentially it. In terms of artwork on its own, it's just not really creative in any way, in my opinion. Now I'm looking at A tier, and I might change some things. Let's see. You know what? People might disagree with me on this, but again, it's my opinion, and it's incredibly biased, but I'm putting Biohazard in S tier. I love that artwork. I said I had the Resident Evil 2 poster right there. What I forgot to mention is I also have a Biohazard poster right there again. 24 by 36. Poster of the key art right there on my wall. That's how much I love it. I love the game. I feel like it's doing everything perfectly that it needs to do for the tone of that game, for the plot of that game, for the atmosphere of that game. And I'm looking at S tier now. Director's Cut deserves to be there. Resident Evil 2 deserves to be there. Biohazard, in my opinion, deserves to be there. Village. I want to put Village up there as well, but I'm not going to. There's just something about it that's not as great, but it is a very unique cover in terms of all these Resident Evil covers. Like, I kind of look like I'm looking at the MCU posters right now. Like, I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, by the way, and I love the posters, but like, I'm not a fool. I know that it's just floating heads, and then floating heads again, and then floating heads again, and then more floating heads. But for Resident Evil, it's 2 people standing next to each other, 2 people standing next to each other, 2 people standing next to each other. Sometimes a zombie in the background, and sometimes one of them is holding a gun. But Village is different. It's creepy. It makes my brain go wild. It makes me think. It makes me wonder. And it made me wonder leading up to its release. Now that I played the game, though, I still like it. Do I like it as much as I did? No. It's staying in A tier. A tier is still really good. A tier is still a really good tier. I'm not going to feel bad about it. It doesn't deserve S tier, but it doesn't deserve anything lower than A. I still really like it. Outbreak deserves to be there. Resident Evil 2 deserves to be there. Now, Resident Evil 1 Remake. Does that deserve S tier? No. With that being said, I look at Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and when I look at it, it makes me want to play it. And that's why I like it so much, I think. But the reason that I want to play it is because that's the Resident Evil game, believe it or not, that I played the least. I barely remember the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. I don't remember much of it. And whenever I look at it, it makes me want to play it. I like the logo, I like the font, I like the artwork. But I have a feeling the reason that I'm feeling such a visceral, positive reaction to it is because it's making me want to play the game. Which is a good thing. That means it's doing its job. But with that being said, I don't know if it... Yes, it does. I just rambled for no reason. It's still A tier. I like 4. It's probably the most nostalgic cover for me personally. But there's just something about it. I feel like it could have been a little bit better. But that's it. That's my final tier ranking. There it is, right there. Anyway, that's it. That's my final ranking of all the Resident Evil video game cover arts. Not all of them, I did forget some, but the ones that have any sort of meaning to me, there it is. And again, this list is incredibly biased. It's based 100% on my personal opinion, so I know for a fact yours does not match mine. And with that being said, let me know what yours is. You don't gotta rank all of them, obviously, but let me know. Let me know what your top 2 favorites are, and then let me know what your least 2 favorites are. Like the 2 that you think are absolutely disgusting and make you want to throw up just looking at them. Kind of like what Umbrella Corps does to me. Kind of like what... Believe it or not, the more that I look at it, the more I really, really, really hate Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles. I really hate that artwork. I feel nauseous kind of looking at it. I don't like it. But again, let me know your favorites. Let me know why. And what do you think about my ranking? Am I stupid? Am I an idiot? You probably think so. Or do you agree? If you agree completely, 100% with my list, let me know too, because that would be really weird, and we might be twins separated at birth. But, you know, that's happened to people. I've watched documentaries about that, so maybe you are. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. This is different for my channel. I would like to do more of these videos. I like watching tier ranking videos, so I would obviously like to make my own and upload them, which is what I'm doing with this one, but... This one performs well, I'll do it again, obviously. Let me know, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you thought. Consider subscribing, because again, I love Resident Evil. Subscribe if you want to support a fellow Resident Evil fanatic, but that's not all I do on this channel. I also do TV show discussions, movie discussions, trailer reactions, that sort of thing. I do collection updates, I talk about video games every now and then, but I love Resident Evil. It's a focus on this channel. I have a playlist of all the Resident Evil videos that I've done so far, so consider checking that out if you like this video. And yeah, Thank you for watching.